host, Horia Ghibuțiu. I'm a Romanian journalist. And probably, I suspect that I was chosen only because of my last name. No writer from abroad can pronounce my name, which is Ghibuțiu, which is composed by a very old Transylvanian term for hump, and it has also a suffix so complicated, so you can call me Horia, of course, if you want. I'm very nervous, but also very honored to introduce some of the most important writers in this evening. And because reading is cool, permit me to read my very small presentation. So it is a distinct honor to engage in conversation with the esteemed Ukrainian writer Andrei Kurkov. Our discussion will last approximately 45 minutes, after which we will gladly entertain questions from the audience, probably a quarter of an hour. And this evening's two guests will be available for book signings following the conclusion of the second event. So let's start.
Yeah, good evening, and I'm very happy to be first time in my life in Brasov. I didn't realize how famous Brasov is and how popular, because actually it was almost impossible to get here from the hotel because all the crowds of those readers who don't come to the events. But I'm very happy to be here and very honored too.
Thank you so much. A city populated with so many readers. So, Mr. Kurkov, as the New York Times once described you, you are a humorous Ukrainian writer with nothing to laugh about. To tie a knot between the Knot Festival and Feel It Chisinau, where you spoke this week about your sense of humor, which you might have lost on the day of the invasion, I wanted to ask you, what still makes you laugh today?
Well, I mean, it's probably not a good tradition to start with laughing at something. No, I mean, the thing is that as a child, when I was 7 years old, I was writing poems. And I started writing poems because of death of my hamsters. I had pets, 3 hamsters. When 2 of them died, I wrote a poem about a hamster who lost his friends, about his depression.
Do you remember their names?
No, I don't remember their names, but I remember the poem, but I will not recite it. I can do it privately. But actually, when I finished the poem, last hamster also died. He fell down from the balcony, from the 5th floor. And I wrote second poem about Lenin because I knew as a child that Lenin was also dead. And I had a feeling that actually people write poems when something horrible happens. So much later I realized you can write love poems or poems with humor. But I have a brother who is 7 years older than me. He was anti-Soviet dissident. And his friends always would come to our small apartment with illegal books, port wine, and new jokes about Brezhnev. And I was allowed to listen to these jokes. And I was already probably 13 years old when I fell in love in this genre. Because jokes in the Soviet time, this kitchen culture of jokes, was I would say, the not dangerous way of resistance, of showing dislike for the system. And I started making up jokes. And for several years I was writing jokes. So I came from poems to prose by writing jokes. And 2 times with my brother, we took part in illegal joke-telling competition in Crimea.
Wow.
And once I won the first prize, 6 bottles of Novosvetskaya Shampanskaya, the Soviet champagne, yeah, for my jokes. But what happens, once actually joke become popular, everybody retells it, changing it. And when it comes back to you, you might not recognize it.
And you are not afraid to make jokes and to tell jokes?
I was not afraid. I know that actually when I was a student and I continued to write jokes, but I was also writing prose. So some of my friends, students were reporting on me to KGB, but probably, I mean...
And you knew that?
Yes, I knew this, because actually I wrote my jokes in a block of paper. And a couple of times it was stolen from me in the university. And once it was returned. But, I mean, I still like, I mean, the era of jokes is gone. So, I mean, but what I want to say that humor is extremely important in the most tragic times. Because on 24th of February 2022, me and my wife, we were at home. We were woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning by the explosions of the missiles in Kiev. We stayed one more day, then we went to our village house, then to Western Ukraine. And at that time, dozens of thousands of Ukrainians went to the front line to defend the country. And the country was in shock. So people were, I mean, I felt like, I mean, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was paralyzed for 40 minutes. I was standing in front of the window, looking at the empty street, and slowly accepting the idea that this is a real big war that nobody expected. I mean, people and me, we expected escalation in Donbass. Nobody expected, like in the Second World War, that a new Hitler comes and will bomb all the cities and all the regions with missiles. But what happened several days later, the soldiers from the front line started recording funny videos, like dancing in the trenches, singing stupid songs with Kalashnikov in the hands, etc. And this was shared on Facebook, on TikTok, everywhere. And people started like coming back to life. Because the humor revives people. I mean, it's like artificial heart. So somebody gives you breath, somebody gives you more air, and you start breathing again. So I remember it was the second time I lost my sense of humor on that day in February, and it came back 2 or 3 weeks later, thanks to the soldiers from the front line. So they saved, actually, sense of humor among Ukrainians.
Congratulations. And did you think on that precisely day, wow, invasion, war, great material for a writer?
I forgot that I'm a writer. Actually, I became a journalist, but also, I mean, I didn't plan to become a journalist. We were in a car going from Kiev to the village, and we were stuck in the first traffic jam next to Bucha and Gostomel. And my wife saw a missile flying over the house, it took us over the road. I didn't see it because I just was concentrating, waiting when the other cars will start moving. Then actually, I think it was already next traffic jam. My phone rang, and there were foreign editors from international newspapers asking me to comment on the war. So first I started commenting while driving or while standing in a queue, because it took us actually more than 22 hours to get from Kiev to Lviv.
Because of the traffic jam?
Yeah, I mean, because all of Ukraine was escaping the war, and there is only one main road to the west, to the border with Poland, and this road is not a highway. Officially it's called a highway, but most of the distance it's one lane, one side, one lane, another side. And I remember that in the first traffic jam, I just looked, because when you live in Kiev, it is 2 lanes. So, I mean, there was a car next to mine with a family with 2 children, a young man and his wife, and the man was sleeping on the wheel in the traffic jam. He was coming from Dnipro, sort of, he drove probably all the previous day, standing in the traffic jams. And when all these cars moved to the border, then people had to wait 1 week to cross the border into Poland. And we managed, I drove for 22 hours and we didn't make it to Lviv. And our children were in Lviv with their friends, so we wanted to find them and then to take them somewhere else. We got stuck in the traffic jam 70 kilometers before Lviv, and I was falling asleep. So we just drove over the road for 2 hours and then continued, yeah. But then actually once we found a place, and this was actually an incredible experience because the first time I saw Ukrainians who are individualists, who are never collective, except for the tragic moments and Maidans, and they wanted to help each other. And we were helped a lot, and then we stayed, we couldn't go to Polish border because of this traffic jam, which was 70 or 80 kilometers long. We went into Carpathian Mountains, and why? Because our daughter at that time lived and worked in London. But on the day of the war, she was in Lviv with our sons and their friends. So we wanted to send her to somewhere back to London. And I had friends in Uzhgorod, in Zakarpattia, I still have friends there. So we decided to go there, and we got stuck at 1 o'clock in the morning in Carpathian Mountains in February, end of February, minus 15. Very little petrol in the car. So if I run engine to hit the 9 people in the car, then I don't have enough petrol to go down to Mukachevo and then to Uzhgorod. And I saw a motel, so I rushed there. I asked, do you have free rooms? He said, no, everything is taken. But write down the telephone number of the guy who lives 15, 20 minutes away by car in the mountains. He bought recently abandoned Soviet touristic hostel. So I called him. He explained me how to get there. He came with towels and with blankets. And then actually he put us in 3 rooms, and he went back in his car to the traffic jam and brought to his hostel probably about 15 cars with families, with children. And when we got finally to Uzhgorod, we stayed with my friends, and then a lady we never met gave us key from her apartment. So we stayed for 4 months in the apartment on this Dostoevsky Street, number 4. And there I started writing every day 1, 2 articles about what was happening in Ukraine. And of course I was in touch with my friends who were also either displaced people or stayed at home, or those who found themselves on occupied territories. Like, I mean, I was for a long time in touch with my friend in Melitopol, which was occupied in the first days. And now we are not in touch because I don't know, I mean, what happened to her, because she didn't answer my last emails.
Mr. Kurkov, thank you so much for this brilliant journalistic report and also for sharing us this amazing slice of recent history. Applause for Mr. Kurkov.
Thank you.
So, on the light part of our interview, in Samson and Nadezhda, I came across the concept of subotnik, sacrificing one's free Saturday in order to be of service to the motherland. And I would like to ask you, do you believe in patriotism that is forced, driven on by compulsion?
Forced patriotism? Well, I would say imposed patriotism. But I mean, patriotism can have many meanings, and if the country is normal, patriotism is also normal. If the country is strange or absurd, then you get absurdity in the patriotism. So it depends which language we use when you pronounce this word. And I mean,
I still believe that subotnik is absurd in any time, during peace or war.
Well, I would say I would invent another word which would be even more absurd, Shabbatnik. Shabbat, you know that on Shabbat the Jews never work and they even don't use elevators. Yes. So Shabbatnik is more absurd than Subotnik. But generally, I mean, there are moments when people are ready to do things for free. And it's not connected with the Subota necessarily, with the Saturday. Because I mean, like, we have friends who are getting together to clean rubbish from the forest next to the village. Nice. So, I mean, when it is coming from the heart, from the active people, it's normal, it's good. They are enthusiasts and they want to make life better, landscape better, nature better. They are caring about the country and their small territory where they live. If it is imposed, if you are told to be at 8 o'clock with a spade on the field, and you'll have to work with the spade for free from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and then you can bring also a bottle of vodka and you can celebrate Subotnik. This is absurd. And this was the Soviet Subotnik, yeah, I mean, and but generally, yes, because, I mean, the novel starts in February 1919, when Kiev was for the second time occupied by Bolsheviks. And Bolsheviks, the communists, I mean, they brought this idea that people should learn how to work without being paid. So they were paid with ideology. And
Brilliant.
Yes, and the first promoter of Subotnik was Lenin. And there is a famous painting where Lenin is carrying a piece of wood, and it is called Lenin on Subotnik.
It's very interesting. So, 50 years ago, in the Bucharest of my childhood, I was neighbors with an elderly Jewish woman, a figure of great wisdom, in whose care my mother would sometimes leave me. Madame Moreno used to say, "The more I come to know people, the more I grow fond of animals." Did you experience a similar feeling when you wrote the novels Grey Bees and Death and the Penguin, where the main character's relationship to animals is central to the story?
Well, I mean, I should say that I have a lot of animals in my novels. There are only two, I think, novels without animals, and one of them about President of Ukraine. It's the President's Last Love. But the Grey Bees, this novel, I mean, it's a bit different because it's more about people and the presence of bees and beehives is an instrument to show the beekeeper, to show the character of the beekeeper, to show the interconnection between nature and people, and how the nature can be misinterpreted. Because the main character of, well, I mean, the story is from 2017. It's about Grey Zone, the strip of land which existed until recently, 340 kilometers long, and sometimes 500 meters wide, sometimes 7 kilometers wide. This is the territory between positions of Ukrainian army and positions of Russian army and separatists, which existed from 2015, when the war was frozen. And I traveled in 2015 with my colleagues along the front line, on the Ukrainian side, of course, and I realized how many people lived in the Grey Zone, how people in Donbass didn't want to go away, they didn't want to be evacuated. So there were villages with no electricity, no police, no administration, no pharmacy, no post office, and people were still trying to survive there. And first I didn't know why, and then actually after talking to some people in Donbass, I realized that they had a choice of two fears. Fear to become a displaced person or refugee without knowing what will happen to you and where you will die, especially if you are an old person. And fear to be killed at home, to be destroyed together with your house. And it turned out that for people of Donbass, especially for older people, it was less fearful to die at home because their relatives, their ancestors are buried on the cemetery of this village. So they will be killed not far away from where they live, underground, where their bodies stay. And so, I mean, for me it was more or less understandable. And when I heard people saying that they don't want to be evacuated because they are waiting for Russians, it is not true. I mean, I would say always that it is not true, because people in Donbass are stubborn, and Ukrainians in general are stubborn. And actually, I mean, the stubbornness is also the energy which helps Ukrainians to defend Ukraine. Because, I mean, another country probably, if attacked by huge Russia, would just give up, would say, sorry, we don't want to be killed, we want to survive, okay, we will become Russian citizens will become slaves, will become mistreated, but will be loyal. But Ukrainians are not like this, and historically not like this. As I mentioned that Ukrainians are individualists. Russians are collective people, because Russia was always a monarchy. And Russians had to accept the Tsar, to love him, and if they were not happy with him, they would kill him and love the next one. Ukrainians, when Ukrainian was Cossacks' territory in 17th century, they were choosing their leaders. The leader was called Hetman, headman in English, yeah?
Hetman in Romanian.
Hetman, yeah. Who was first of all a military leader, but at the same time, yes, Ukraine was all the time at war against Poland, against Russia, against Turks, but this was also part of normal state life, because Ukraine during Hetmanat, during these Cossack times, had diplomacy, had a legal system, there were courts and judges, there were no currency. So Ukrainians were using Polish gold, Russian silver, Turkish silver. It was, and of course, I mean, people who were changing all these coins, all these metals, were Ukrainian Jews. So, but I mean, it was a proper society where everyone, especially men, because yes, it's interesting because I mean, Ukraine is matriarchal society where women allow men to think that they are important and they are taking decisions. Yeah, and so what was happening that because Ukrainians were choosing their hetmans, these Ukrainians were sure that they can influence the politics in the country and they can replace this hetman with another hetman. So Ukraine at the same time is motherland of anarchy, and in fact the biggest army of anarchists was organized in Ukraine in 1918 in Poltava region by Nestor Makhno in the beginning of the Civil War. First Makhno had 35,000 soldiers and later up to 80. And I mean, I forgot your question. Did I answer it?
It was very long. Yes, of course you answered. Thank you also for this lesson of history. Keeping with the spirit of a literary festival devoted to the passage of books into film, I wonder if you watched the feature film Grey Bees based on your book. Couldn't find it on Mubi. I only saw the trailer. What do you think about the saying we hear very often lately? I didn't read the book, but I saw the movie.
Well, I had a lot of film experiences in my life. I wrote film scripts, and 20 films were made based on my scripts. So some experience was very positive, like with the film A Friend of the Deceased, and some was negative. But in fact, I wrote a play for theater based on Grey Bees, and I actually, what I forgot to say, that Grey Bees is a story about two men who hated each other from the childhood, and because of the war, they remained only two inhabitants of the village, abandoned by everybody else, and they live on parallel streets. One lives with his bees on Lenin Street, another one on Shevchenko Street. And it's about how they survive and how they accept the war when actually the shells and missiles are flying over the village, because on the left side there are Ukrainian soldiers, on the right side Russian soldiers. Russian sniper comes to the village secretly to shoot at Ukrainians. And they are trying to keep the village alive, and main character, Sergei, is trying to keep his bees alive. And I remember what I didn't say. And he loved bees. He's a simple man, honest, who is a retired miner engineer, only 49 years old, but because of the work in mine, he doesn't have a good health. But he respects the bees because he thinks that bees are the only living beings that manage to create communist society, because they work for free, they produce honey, honey is taken by men from them, they are not paid back, and they continue to work. So, I mean, it's like, for him, it's like an ideal society. Social society is created by ants among the insects. And there are 3 women in his life, when the life in the village becomes more and more dangerous, he understands that the honey the bees are making is becoming bitter because of the gunpowder, because of all these explosions around, and the gunpowder, burnt gunpowder, falling on the flowers, and then bees picking this gunpowder together with flower pollen and taking it into the beehive. So he dreams to take bees on holiday for the summer, away from the war. He manages to get his 6 beehives on the trailer, and he goes to Ukraine-controlled territory, and then he goes to Crimea.
And your play is about?
Sorry?
Your play is
the play is only about the first part of the book. So the play ends with him living in his Zhiguli, Lada, and trailer with 6 beehives, first to separatist territories, and from there to Ukraine. And then the novel becomes a road movie, but the play is only about life in the village. And the film, which is made now, is based mostly on the play. So it ends also in the village. It has different ending. I had some kind of disagreement with the film director, so practically I didn't want to watch the film.
Okay.
For a year. 9 days ago I was in London, and the film was shown in the festival, and I went to watch it, and I liked it. So I'm fine now. I'm happy with the film. I appreciate what he did. I don't think I want to have another film made by him, based on my books. Because still, I mean, for me, the book material is more important. But he managed to recreate the relationship between these 2 enemies from the childhood, who are becoming friends, or who are becoming people who cannot live without each other, because there are only 2 of them in the village.
In this screen adaptation of your book about No Man's Land, there is a line about Russian and Ukrainian shelling. It's like badminton. Who, in your view, is refereeing this match, and in whose favor do you believe the final score will stand?
You are talking about the war. Yes. Well, I mean, for Ukraine, this war is a just war, because we are defending our land. And we are not only defending land, because this war is run on 3 levels. The territorial war of Putin is, I would say, new. It's not very old war. But on the middle level, this is war against Ukrainian identity. Identity is made of language, history, and culture. So, I mean, Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and now post-Soviet Empire was always trying to practically to erase Ukrainian identity, to make Russians out of Ukrainians, to destroy Ukrainian individualism. And how you can make it? I mean, Russia already succeeded several times in this process of Russification, sort of to impose Russian language on the non-Russian speaking territories, to replace Ukrainian language with Russian. What happens next to identity? If your language suddenly becomes Russian, then Russian culture and Russian history are becoming your culture and your history. You are becoming Russian, and you don't care about Ukraine. So, I mean, this is the idea. And in 1780, Catherine the Great banned education in Ukrainian language. So, like Kiev Mohila Academy, the best-known university, was told no more lectures in Ukrainian, only in Russian. Now, on occupied territories, there is no education in Ukrainian again in the schools.
It's happening again.
It's happening again. And this war is 300 years old, because the first law against Ukrainian language was signed by Peter the Great in 1720, 11 years after Poltava battle. You know Poltava battle because actually Hetman Mazepa, who lost the war against Peter the Great, he escaped to Bessarabia. together with his friends and with what was left from Swedish army, because it was war, it was part of Northern War, Russian army against Ukrainian army and against army of Karl XII. So I know there is a representative, respected representative of Sweden here. So I know that actually when you mention to Swedes about Karl XII, they are saying that we are not proud of him. We are not proud of him. I mean, Ukrainians were not proud of Mazepa because they believed for decades that he was a traitor. Because Russian image of Mazepa is he's a traitor of Russian Empire, but it's normal. Because, I mean, he wanted to get back freedom for Ukraine, independence for Ukrainian territory, and for himself, of course, yeah.
Good. So I would like to ask you, interesting, the first name of the director and the screenwriter of this Grey Beast is Dmitro. Obviously Ukrainian, not Dmitry, the Russian forename. And it alludes to a passage in Grey Beast concerning the double life of names. Let me quote you. My name is Sergei Sergeyevich, so you must be Pyotr, not Petro. No, I'm Petro. That is simply what is written on my identity card. And I, in my passport, I'm Serhiy Serhiyovich, yet in my daily life, I am Sergei Sergeyevich. There lies the difference. You see, I used to ask my former colleagues who read the news on the radio to say Luhansk, not Lugansk, for a single consonant could betray whether we regarded the territory as Ukrainian or Russian. Do you believe that all names and toponyms ought to be changed, or will they continue to exist side by side?
Well, you know that the history happens slowly. We think that it happens very quickly because suddenly you are hit by a car, you are in a hospital, this is your personal history, it happened very quickly, you didn't notice the car. But history takes time. And people, you rename the street. And people remember 20, 40 years how this street was called and still saying the old name. Because there is some kind of always resistance, even subconsciously, resistance against imposed new names. Regarding Dmitro, Dmitry, etc., this is a different issue. Ukrainian, I would say, name system is copycatting the Soviet system. I mean, in the Soviet Union, you could be called Mykola, which is like Nicholas or Mykolai. But in the Soviet passport, you would be written as Nikolai, so the Russian way. So, I mean, your name would be, Ukrainian name would be Russified. And in Ukraine, actually, now the opposite system, like taking revenge. So we'll take Russian names and
You're taking back your names.
And Ukrainianize them, but we will not Ukrainianize names which are not part of this territory. I mean, or for example, you cannot Ukrainianize Crimean Tatar names. Mustafa is Mustafa, yeah, etc. So there is this kind of assimilation of the name instead of integration of the name. And I think about this very often, and actually I'm always asked by some patriots why I don't write on my English or on my other books in other countries, Andrei, not Andrei.
And why don't you do that?
Well, because I was named by my parents, not by the Soviet Union. And I have respect for their decision. And I don't mind when on my Ukrainian translations it is written Andrei Kurkov. But in reality, I'm Andrei because I was born in Russia. I'm ethnic Russian, probably with some Cossacks connections because my grandfather was Don Cossack. And Don Cossacks were usually Zaporizhia Cossacks, which were disbanded by Catherine the Great, and they were given a choice to become peasants or to keep the weapon, but to move to Don region to defend the Russian Empire from Chechens. And so I assume actually my ancestors went to defend Russian Empire from Chechens and other Caucasians, yeah. But also Andrei is not Russian name. it's Romanian name, it's Greek name, and the most famous intellectual in Ukrainian history, Metropolite Andrei Sheptitsky, insisted, he was Ukrainian, proper Ukrainian, he insisted also always that he is Andrei, not Andrei. So, I mean, I believe that there are two variants of spelling this name in Ukrainian culture, Andrei and Andrei.
Thank you so much for this. I would like to ask you, what is like writing in Russian, your mother tongue, while being the most famous Ukrainian writer?
Well, I mean, it is a difficult position. It makes many people unhappy. But in fact, actually, I write now already for many years, I write in Russian, Ukrainian, and English. But fiction novels, I write in Russian. I cannot, and I don't want to publish books in Russian now, because the bookshops in Ukraine don't want to sell books in Russian. Because in spite of the fact that many Ukrainians are Russian speakers, before they were 40%, now probably 30%. But at the same time, every Russian speaker should accept responsibility for the war of Russian language as a political instrument against Ukrainian culture, against Ukrainian language. And actually, when this war started, and the linguistic question became much more adamant and more, I would say, important, I mean, I had to decide what is more important for me, my mother tongue or my country. And actually, my country, Ukraine, is more important to me than my language. I mean, nobody will take away my mother tongue. I write in Russian the novels, but they are translated into Ukrainian and sold only in Ukrainian. I mean, when somebody asks me, can I read your novels in Russian, I'm just saying that give me your email, I will send you the file. And yeah, but I write also in English. And I remember that when I was 18, I wrote poetry in Russian, English, and Ukrainian, and I was enjoying the difference of the atmosphere each language dictates. Like, all my poems in Russian were full of absurdity, all poems in Ukrainian were funny, and all poems in English were depressive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In February, you remarked that 99% of Ukrainian intellectuals believe one should not share a stage with any Russian, even an anti-Putin one. Has anything changed since then? Or do you think this excessively patriotic attitude will change in time?
It will change, yes. It didn't change yet, and we had lots of people cancelled because of the joint events, and I was cancelled and my books were removed. For 2 years, you wouldn't be able to find my books even in Ukrainian. In Ukraine,
and what did you say in your defense?
Sorry?
What did you say defending
Well,
yourself?
first of all, actually, you have events to which Russian anti-Putin writers, intellectuals are invited. And if you don't go because of this to take part in the discussion, then Ukraine is discussed without Ukrainian voice, without people who represent Ukraine. I had, actually, we had an event with Misha Shishkin in the beginning of the war, but for example, in my case, the biggest scandal in my cancellation happened because I had an event with Masha Gessen, who is an American citizen, who left as a child Soviet Union with her parents, and we were talking in Toronto. It was the main event of the Toronto International Festival. It was introduced by Margaret Atwood, and I knew that in the audience there will be members of the government, and the event was broadcast on national Canadian radio. So I think actually I was to be there. I mean, can you imagine, I mean, a conversation like this without a representative of Ukraine? And Masha Gessen is, you know, she is sentenced in Russia in absentia to 9 years of prison. She is also enemy of Putin. So for me, it was normal to be and to talk with her. But when the plan, it was before the event that when in Ukraine some intellectuals found out that I will be talking in Toronto, So the whole army of intellectuals were trying to force me
The army of intellectuals.
to stay, not to go there, to say that I will never talk to any person with Russian connection or with Russian past, and I refused. I paid for this, yes, I'm still paying for this, but at least I don't regret, because I think I did the right thing.
Absolutely. This is my last question. After that, we will entertain
Thank you.
questions from the audience. So, though not a central theme in the work of a writer from a country that has known the terror of famine, food is nonetheless present in your books, both in 1919 and in the 2000 year. Your characters eat millet porridge with or without gravy. May we speak of hunger as the biggest transgenerational trauma of the Ukrainian people?
Well, I mean, hunger is a phenomena that is known not only to Ukrainians, but in Ukraine, hunger was used practically as an instrument to destroy majority of population, because Lenin didn't trust Ukrainians and Stalin didn't trust Ukrainians because of their individualism. They didn't want to join collective farms. That's why in the beginning of the 1930s, 100,000 or more farmers with their families were deported to Siberia. And by the way, their descendants are now loyal subjects to Putin. And they are, I mean, there are 4 million at least ethnic Ukrainians in Russia who support Putin. And this is also the result of the trauma, yeah. But the famine, the Holodomor, happened in 1932-33. And it was between 3 and 5 million people who died. But they died not because they didn't grow enough wheat, but because everything they grow was taken away by the Red Army, by special army units, which were confiscating all the food from Ukrainian peasants. And I don't know whether this food was taken to Volga region, which had also hunger, or to the Russian army, which is always hungry. But the result was incredible. I mean, and then people who survived hunger, I mean, they were praising the food. They were, I mean, my mother, I mean, she knew hunger in evacuation as a child. Until she died, and she died actually like 6 years ago, she wouldn't allow to throw away the dry bread. She would make stale bread into some kind of toast and dry bread and things like this. And of course, I mean, people are, I think genetically now, this genetical memory is forcing them to make big stocks of food. And like, but it's not only Ukrainian stuff. I mean, because
Absolutely.
when COVID started, I mean, what Germans did, they went to Aldi and to other supermarkets and they bought more salts than they needed for their life. And the same happened actually in Ukraine. In fact, in 1989, me and my wife, we bought a hut, a small house near Kiev, 50 kilometers away. And together with this house, we bought a huge pack of salt, which was bought by previous owners.
You still have?
No, I mean, probably it is still there, but the village was occupied by Russians, and we bought another house. We didn't sell this one. We own the ruins, but I think the salt is still there. So yeah, but for Ukrainians, in the national history, I mean, this artificial famine was the biggest tragedy. And because this was the sign of attention from Moscow. So that's what happens when Moscow dislikes you as a nation, as people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kurkov. Any questions from the audience? Please, we have 15 minutes. As you can see, Mr. Kurkov is a very kind person. And of course, I'm pretty sure he will also want to speak about literature, not only by politics. Hopefully it's not my fault. Any questions?
So first of all, Slava Ukraini,
Героям слава.
and just out of curiosity, there's this guy who's a real surprise for me. His name is Gonzalo Lira. I was just wondering, have you ever had an encounter with him, or would you have any interesting information on him?
Was he a Brazilian who was
In
fighting
Kharkiv.
for the separatists, or?
He was taking sides with the invaders, and that came out as a very, very big surprise. So that's why I'm so curious, because
No, I don't know much. I mean, I've heard the name and I read about his story, but I never met him. And the strange thing is that there are, I think, 3,000 Colombians fighting against Russia, defending Ukraine. And there are hundreds of Cubans on the Russian side. And it's, there is some kind of a separate Latin American story in this war, which will be researched maybe later.
yeah, I was really curious because the guy was really, really something. And once again, he's a very big surprise, taking sides with the invaders.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I will try to find out more. I'm curious myself.
Hi, I'm from Moldova. My native language is Romanian, but I do speak Russian. And everyone asks me, so you speak Russian, why you don't speak Ukrainian? Do you understand Ukrainian? But no, because it's a completely separate language. I mean, I can pick up some words, but I don't understand the full sentences. So, yeah. My question is, how is for Russian speakers, Ukrainians, to switch to Ukrainian? Like for journalists, writers, how do they learn to write in Ukrainian if this happens?
Well, I mean, Ukraine is 34 years old now, I mean, the new independence. And all that time, there were discussions about Russian and Ukrainian language, but there were no legislation. So, I mean, we had Russian schools, Ukrainian schools, etc. But Russia was more and more using Russian language and the topic of Russian language as an instrument to divide the society. And of course, I mean, Ukrainian politicians who were not professional, but who wanted to have popularity and have their own regional voters, they were also dividing Ukraine linguistically, like some politicians in Western Ukraine, the party called Svoboda, Freedom, they were fighting against Russian speakers, and the parties created in Donbass by local oligarchs were defending Russian and demanding status of official language for the Russian language. But in fact, from 1990s, the young Russian language writers who were ethnic Ukrainians, they are switching into Ukrainian language. And the most famous cases is Irene Rozdobudko. She is a writer from Donetsk. She worked in circus. She actually graduated from circus school. She wrote her first novel, Утренний уборщик. It's like a cleaning man in the morning in Russian. Then she came to Kyiv, which was a Russian-speaking city at that time, and she started writing in Ukrainian. And she became very popular. She writes love novels, romance books, which are very good, and they are made into films. Another example, the most well-known crime novel writer in Ukraine, Andrei Kurkov, he wrote many books. I mean, he wrote already, he's younger than me, he published more than 100 books. Can you imagine? He's a real professional, hard-working writer. He is like a factory. He counts the words, how many words he wrote every day. But he wrote first 20, 25 books in Russian. Then he started writing in both languages, in Russian and in Ukrainian. And then probably 15, 20 years ago, he started writing only in Ukrainian. So this is a normal evolution. There is a tragic story with the same kind of tendency. The most famous Russian language writer from Donetsk, Volodymyr Rafeenko. He was made a refugee by Russian invasion in 2014. He moved to Kiev. He was helped by Ukrainian language writer Andrei Bondar, who allowed Volodymyr and his wife to stay in his house next to Kiev. And in 2022, his village was occupied, and he became second-time refugee, and he almost died. I mean, he was saved by other writers. He was taken away secretly from under the occupation. And it was, I think, September 22, when he was taken out of the occupation. He said, "I will never write a word in Russian again." His Ukrainian is not brilliant still. But since then he writes in Ukrainian, and Andrei Bondar actually edits his works. So, I mean, he will improve, of course, but I understand this situation, and I would not like to be in his place. Because this is not only external trauma, it's internal trauma, because your learned language, not your mother tongue, but your learned language becomes your instrument. And you cannot know any language you learn as well as your mother tongue. So you depend on the editors, you depend on many things, but now the new language imposes limitations on your capability to tell this story. Because there are lots of things you cannot do in the language with which you were not born. So I mean, I don't know, maybe in 20 years' time he will get back when Russian language will lose the stigma. Because, I mean, like German language had a stigma for more than 20 years. When I was 11 years old, I was asked in the school, "Do you want to learn German or English?" And I said, "I will never learn German. Germans killed my grandfather." And I learned German when I was 36. And I do a lot of events in German, and I have many readers in German. So, I mean, like, I detached with age myself from this Second World War history. So one day, people will detach Russian language from Putin and from this war and from the, from the image of Russia as an aggressor and a country that murders people.
Take one last question.
Maybe two or three.
Maybe two, yes, but
Yes, but we have to have this.
Again tomorrow morning, and yes, you'll have the opportunity to.
Hello. You said about how humor is important in times of tragedy. Do you remember after your initial shock when your humor came back, and how did you recover?
Well, I mean, I have a habit from the Soviet time to look for funny things in social and political life, for strange things, for abnormal things. So, I mean, this is how actually I was creating jokes, making jokes. And the humor that came back, it was different. It was different because it was, I mean, I love black humor, you know, I mean, it's different stuff. It's not light children jokes. And this black humor came back with also some kind of irony, self-irony, and a lot of cynicism. And this war actually changed me as a writer also because, for example, I had my own taboos in literature. I mean, I didn't like to create violent episodes. I wouldn't like to describe murder or something ugly. And suddenly, because of the war, I mean, for 2.5 years I couldn't write fiction at all, but recently I finished the third novel about Samson and Nadezhda, and I wrote in this novel, in the end, an episode, a very bloody and violent episode, that I would never write before the war. I would stop myself. But now, actually, violence is normal. Because, I mean, the news you get, the war news, they're all violent. Then we have this culture of YouTube videos from the front lines. So, I mean, the number of dead bodies of Russian soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers that I saw in the last 3 years, it's thousands and thousands. You get accustomed to this. I mean, this becomes a part of sort of normality of the war. So you don't count dead. You feel something different when a person you knew is killed. And I had some friends killed, and I recently actually, a son of our friend's family was killed in the war, Maxim Nelipa, who was actually a TV host, a TV comedian many years ago, yeah. Then you have a different feeling, yes. But then actually when it is not personalized, then it is normal. You stop react emotionally. You are sad, and then it's interesting because I mean some Ukrainians are rejoicing when they see videos how Russian soldiers are killed. This is for somebody is funny. I mean for me it is not funny at all. I mean the death is not funny, but I mean black humor is based on the idea that death can be funny. I think, yeah, there is a lady here.
Good evening. So in December in Romania, our presidential elections were cancelled because of Russian intervention. And the pro-Russian candidate was very close to win those elections. How do you explain the fact that many people still believe the Russian narrative nowadays and admire Putin?
Well, Trump admires Putin. Trump wants to be like Putin. He is, I think, not very happy with the legislation system in the US, where president cannot change constitution like Putin did in order to stay in power. I mean, like, when somebody is very strong or shows up that he is very strong, the people who are weak, they start thinking that it would be great to behave like him. Everybody is afraid of him. And Russia is very good at propaganda. I mean, Russian secret services were always the most efficient ones. So, I mean, the narrative, Russian narrative, is winning in Africa and in Latin America. And of course, I mean, it was a surprise for me that it could win in Romania. But this is actually TikTok, and this is the social networks through which it's very easy to manipulate people who are attached to social networks. I mean, we are getting now generations of people who are not watching news and who are not reading analytical newspapers about what is happening. Everybody wants to find out the judgment on this and this in 5 seconds TikTok. And what is 5 seconds actually? You are told who is guilty, who is enemy, who is ugly, who is wrong. And then you share this. You just either repost it or you tell your friends. And of course, I mean, there is always a fashion to dislike your government. I mean, in Ukraine, it is tradition to hate politicians. And I often think that actually Ukrainians are electing a president in order to hate him. Because somebody should be guilty and responsible for everything which is going wrong. And I don't know much about Romanian mentality. But I assume that Russian specialists found the nodes which provoke the thoughts and the reactions that Russia needs among the Romanian voters and in Romanian society. There is one more.
Thank you so much.
Well, maybe the last one.
Okay, the last one.
Yes.
Thank you. That's fine. Can you tell us a bit about the Ukrainian book market? I mean, you were saying that people are not reading as much today. What happened?
I didn't say this.
Oh, you did.
No, I didn't say this.
Well, I said that.
Yeah.
So, but how about young
They are not banned. Russian language books are not sold in physical bookshops, but they are sold online. There are 60 online bookshops where you can actually buy Russian language books. The Russian language literature is in hiding. It exists. It's not obvious. It is ignored by Ukrainian language intellectuals. But we do have good writers who still write in Russian, like Alexei Nikitin, or the best Russian language poet in Ukraine, Alexander Kabanov. And they are both translated internationally. But of course, I mean, it's not something you should be proud of now in the time of the war, to defend Russian language literature or to discuss it. But if we talk about book market, the young writers are very popular among young readers. And among young active readers and active members of society, it is fashionable to buy books written by young writers in Ukrainian, mostly about the war, mostly by writers who are at the same time soldiers, like Alexander Mekhet, Artem Chapai, Artur Dronь, and I mean, we have dozens of writers and essayists who are fighting and writing. And this is a phenomena, but this phenomena is popular only with young readership. So middle-aged, older readers, they are not so much interested in this young literature. Book market is, I wouldn't overpraise it. I mean, we have good news. We, like 2 years ago, in 1 year, we had 13 new bookshops in Kyiv. And now the biggest bookshop in Ukraine is situated in Kyiv on Krещатик, on the main street. It is 3 floors, and this used to be an international brand shop. But it was possible to open it only because of the war, because commercial rents went down. So now actually it's not so expensive to run a bookshop. But I think when the war is over and when the foreign businesses come back, it will be much tougher, it will be much more difficult. The numbers of books sold are not that great. I mean, they are okay, and the market is slowly growing, but you cannot call publishers prosperous, or, I mean, some writers are making finally normal royalties. And Ukrainian Forbes magazine recently actually published a list of 20 highest paid Ukrainian writers. Most of them are young ones, actually. Like Maxim Kidruk, maybe you don't know him, but there are self-made writers who also do their own promotion. Yeah. And what is interesting, yes, that the sales of Russian language books was replaced with sales of English language books. So we have a huge rise in the sales of books in English. And now actually British publishers are very happy. Because I mean they are sending thousands and thousands and thousands of copies of British writers' books to Ukraine, and they are bought. My books in Ukrainian, I mean, you can find them in the bookshops, but they are not bestsellers in Ukraine, and there are no reviews. Well, probably because I write in Russian and because I make a lot of people angry when I disagree with what majority thinks. But I don't believe in majority, especially in political majority.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your questions. We extend our sincere thanks to Andrei Kurkov. Applause for him.
Thank you very much for excellent questions. And,
thank you so much.
And thank you for being here and for attending this festival. And please come to all the events, because every festival needs more listeners who are becoming later readers, and some of them later are becoming writers. And then, yeah. Good luck for the festival and for you.